now move on to the NFC North. I think there's an argument to be made. This is the best division in football, top to bottom. I want to start, we'll go team by team here with the Detroit Lions. They are the favorites to win the division, certainly the most talented team on paper in this division. But Kelley, they lost both coordinators. Ben Johnson now with the Chicago Bears, Aaron Glenn now leading the New York Jets. Very simple question here. How much, if any, regression should we expect from the Detroit Lions this season, particularly on the offensive end, losing Ben Johnson?
Yeah, I'm expecting some. How about that? I'm expecting some. I think I would be shocked if it was zero. And if it is zero, I think that speaks to even more of how good of a coach Dan Campbell has really turned into. Because I think that even Jared Goff, where I think he can be underrated at times, I think he was really built up for that system and operated perfectly in that system that Ben Johnson was running there. So I'm very interested to see what this offense looks like, especially down a couple pieces on the offensive line that we saw there for so long as well. I still think they will have a good enough offensive line. A lot of those and the big-time pieces still remain there in Detroit. So I expect them to be competitive, but what is the long-term outlook for this team as far as where they stack up at the rest of the division? I think the Packers are right there with them, and how far behind are the Vikings and the Bears, I think, are a fair question. But to me, this is not as crystal clear as last season, where I thought the Lions would win the division, and they did so. And I think this is going to be a competitive division, and they do regress a little bit.
Yeah, Detroit plus 150 to win the NFC North for a second straight year. Packers plus 250, Vikings plus 350, Chicago Bears plus 450. Jeff, I know you share some of those same concerns about the brain drain in Detroit and, losing Frank Ragnow on the offensive line. That is huge. But they do get Aiden Hutchinson back on defense. He is your Defensive Player of the Year favorite right now at the DK Sportsbook, plus 650. Any interest in that?
I don't know. I feel like I need longer odds just because he's coming back from such a major injury. We don't know what version of him we're going to be getting back. And I think that speaks to the entirety of the Detroit defense. Lee McNeil was such a huge part of that defense. He got that knee injury at the end of the year last year. Marcus Davenport missed most of the season with that triceps injury. They're replacing their top cover corner as well, swapping out Carlton Davis for DJ Reed. Will this all work, especially under a new defensive coordinator? I know someone that was in the system. It's not like they're bringing someone from the outside, but it doesn't mean it's the same coaching technique. Same thing on the offensive side of the ball. I think there's a lot of tricky questions to ask on that defense.
The Green Bay Packers, like we just mentioned, plus 250 to win this division. I feel like this year could go either way for Green Bay. I think this could be an 11 or 12 win team. I think they could take a step back, as we saw some signs of last season with Jordan Love, although fair to question whether he was ever fully healthy. But ultimately, this is a team that still made the playoffs despite going 1-5 in division a year ago. Kelley, would you consider a bet on the Green Bay Packers to win the NFC North? Do you look at their odds to make the playoffs, maybe mosey on over to the win total?
Yeah, my favorite bet there would be to make the playoffs. That is one I'm still considering. I don't think, I have them in the, spoiler alert, in the VSiN NFL betting guide. I do have the Green Bay Packers as your division champions for the NFC North. I don't know that I'll get there on a division bet. I think they're, like I said before, I think the Lions are still right there, and Vikings and Bears are very interesting teams to me this season. But minus 135 to make the playoffs, I do think that's a bet I'm going to end up landing on with the Packers. I am a Jordan Love believer. I think that he could use some more help from the pass catching group, but there is going to be some reinforcements coming this year. This is a team that, look, I think they still got some questions on the defensive side of the ball, but not as bad as I was expecting maybe a season ago. You add Matthew Golden to that receiving core on the offensive side. I think this is a team that starts to put it all together this year. Very competitive division. I think it's going to be tough for them to fight through, but what were they, 1-5 in the division last year? I don't think it's going to be nearly that bad for them this season. I'm a believer in the Packers. I think you hit on it perfectly, Nick. That make the playoff number is the one that I'm looking at for a bet on this team.
Major concerns in the secondary for me when it comes to Green Bay. Obviously, they let go of Jair Alexander, did not necessarily replace him. So the cornerback room, to me, which has been an issue for the Packers for a very long time, still something they will have to overcome. Jeff, Kelley mentioned Matthew Golden. Looking at his receiving props, 800 plus receiving yards for Matthew Golden as a rookie. You can get that at plus 150. What are your expectations for him, either from a betting context or if you want to take this from a fantasy perspective?
So fantasy-wise, and betting perspective, I think that's a high number to hit. Just because of their proclivity to run the ball frequently. I think Matt LaFleur still wants to feed Josh Jacobs a ton. And just that there's the number of different options there. I know that there's some attrition in the wide receiver room, but I expect more out of Jaden Reed again this year. I really like Tucker Kraft. I think he's one of those wait-on tight ends a little bit there. When we talk tight ends later on this week, I'll mention Tucker Kraft. So I like his Golden's talent. It just seems like that's asking for a lot of volume.
Taking a look at the Minnesota Vikings, third shortest odds to win the division. You see some 9.5, some 8.5s out there in the win total market. This is a team, by the way, guys, that has not made the playoffs in consecutive seasons since 2008 and 2009. Always feels like they're swinging back and forth between wildly overachieving and wildly underachieving. Kelley, what do you expect from J.J. McCarthy in year one as the starter? Could Kevin O'Connell work his magic on McCarthy like he did with Sam Darnold?
Yeah, no idea, Nick, and no idea what to expect from McCarthy. I think that you hit it perfectly. O'Connell, we've seen him work his magic the past couple years, whether it was Kirk Cousins, whether it was Sam Darnold. I was a big believer in this team when Kirk Cousins was still on the roster. This year, more question marks for me. This defense, can they replicate the success that they found a year ago? I do have some questions about that. I would expect some regression on the defensive side of the ball. And then the offense is loaded with weapons. I loved when they brought over Aaron Jones from the Packers to fill in that backfield. I think they've got a solid backfield. I think they've got a great group of pass catchers. It's all set up and laid out in front of J.J. McCarthy to go out there and get it done. But I think I've heard a lot of people with some Vikings, to win the division or to go pretty far in the playoffs. And I think this is a team that I'm going to need to see it out of first, guys. I don't rule out maybe me getting a little bit more excited and getting some bets in on them for some overs on their win total, or maybe a yes play on the playoffs once we get into the season. But I'm going to need to see more of it before I get too excited about the situation there in Minnesota.
Jeff, from a fantasy perspective, Kelley mentioned Aaron Jones. I am out on Aaron Jones this season. I'm all in on Jordan Mason. I think he could end up being the guy sooner than we think in Minnesota. But how do you break down that backfield for fantasy?
Yeah, I agree with you on that one there. I mean, I'll say the one thing about Aaron Jones is the price is fine on him. It's not like you're being asked to pay a full-time running back price. He's usually going about pick 75 in drafts there. And the gap between he and Mason is pretty tight though. It's so funny. I do a radio hit in El Paso on a regular basis, and the host always asks me about UTEP alum Aaron Jones. Great guy, great in the community, but I think he backslides a little bit this year.
All right, fellas, let's finish out with the Chicago Bears. The odds say this is the fourth best team in the division, and yet it wouldn't totally shock me if this team made the playoffs. Wouldn't totally shock me if everything clicked around Ben Johnson and they're pushing to potentially win this division. We see surprise teams in the NFL every year. What is your opinion on this Bears team, Kelley? What do you expect from Ben Johnson in year one? Can he elevate Caleb Williams to the point where he's not taking 68 sacks like he did last season?
Well, yeah, can he elevate Caleb Williams? Can he elevate the offensive line? I mean, I think these are all big questions to be asked. I am a believer in Ben Johnson. I think I'm a long-term believer in Caleb Williams, too. I think we saw the perfect... you almost compare this back to an NBA rookie year where it was kind of, hey, Caleb Williams, go out there and kind of see what you can do. Some of those things you did in college where it's a little bit of the Mahomes-like out of script plays, and let's go see how it works in the pros. A lot of it fell flat on its face, but taking a lot of sacks at the end of the day. I don't know what the impact will be in year one. This is another team that I'm staying away from getting too high on or too low on. Believer in Ben Johnson. I think Caleb Williams gets there eventually. I like the wide receivers that they have there in Chicago. Think the offense comes around, but they've got some issues on the defensive side of the ball too. I think that if you were certain one way on the offense or the defense, I could maybe get a little bit more excited about this team, but I got questions on both sides of the ball right now, so I'm going to be staying away from a betting standpoint.
For the Lions to have 4 wins after 5 weeks, they play at the Packers versus the Bears, at the Ravens versus the Browns, at the Bengals. Do you give the Lions a 4-1 record after 5 weeks, plus 320 on this bet?
No, not at all. Not at all. This is a pass it completely. We look at the schedule. You got the Packers, the Ravens, and the Bengals all on the schedule coming up early on for this Lions team. There is a lot of tough games that there are going to be dogs in early. This is where you bring up the old, I know nobody wants to hear me say it on July 15th right now, but this is the old money line rollover if you were really going to want to play it that way. Just play money lines early in the season on the Lions. But no, 4 wins after 5 weeks. I do not think they start 4-1 with those 3 road games. So complete pass on that one for me.
How about Nick? How about the Packers divisional wins? We mentioned that 1-5 record in division last year, still made the playoffs. Over 3.5 division wins this year, plus 125. Play it or pass it.
Well, the Packers are going to have to be better in division, right? It's exceedingly rare to go 1-5 against your NFC North opponents and still find a way to make the postseason. They obviously dropped only one other game the entire year, and that was Week 1 against the Philadelphia Eagles. So I certainly think we see some progression, but it's difficult to parse exactly where those wins come, right? You compare that to the AFC North, and you think, oh, you get 2 free wins against the Cleveland Browns. I mean, there are no free wins in the NFC North this season. We saw the Packers lose at home to the Chicago Bears late in the year when the Bears were a complete mess. So this is a pass for me. I think I need a little bit more value than plus 125. I think there are plenty of worlds in which this Packers season goes south. Jordan Love doesn't get back on track. And we saw 2 completely different versions of Jordan Love and really the Packers offense overall last season. Early in the year, it looked more like we saw at the end of the 2023 season. They're whipping the ball all over the place. Jordan Love is averaging 35 pass attempts per game. We saw a much more limited version of that passing game over the second half. Part of that was the schedule softened up. They really just leaned on Josh Jacobs. But Jordan Love went from throwing the ball 35 times a game to about 22 times per game. And that is really, really difficult to sustain against what will be a tougher schedule this season. So I think Green Bay, I would pencil them in for probably 3 wins in the NFC North. All those games are going to feel like toss-ups. I know they're slight home favorites against Detroit in Week 1. Obviously, you don't feel great about that game with the way that the Lions have owned them in recent years. So I'm going to pass this one at plus 125.
Kelley, I know you really, really love very specific props. So here's another very specific prop. Minnesota Vikings to finish 3rd in the NFC North at plus 225. Play it or pass it.
I like this one. I do like this one, Jeff. It's a play it in the sense that I do think the Vikings end up finishing 3rd. I think this is a prop that's a great example with how many markets we have available to us. If you did want to go bet this, I think there's probably a better way to play this, and this is where I would play over at DraftKings Sportsbook. There are a lot of sportsbooks posting these days. The exacta of what the division finishes: Lions, Packers, Vikings, Bears at 10-1, and Packers, Lions, Vikings, Bears at 11-1. You play both those, get a little bit better price than what you're seeing on plus 225. Still has the Vikings finishing 3rd in the division.